Did you,
Like an hour late.
Oh, yeah. She looked.
Oh, did you sell your bedroom set? Your,
Well, just
the
bed.
frame? Yeah.
And then,
yeah,
I
we got our
saw
new
it last
stuff.
Was she
night.
in Nina? No, she's in Toma. Oh, Toma. Oh, you are?
Okay, can start.
Hatchet Creek.
hold on.
What's that? Hatchet Creek.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Hatchet Creek, yeah. Toma? Yeah, that's, I was in the National Guard with a bunch of guys from Toma, and they have an engineering company up there, and they kept calling Toma Hatchet Creek.
What's the inside joke?
Yeah, I know.
But everyone else is on, I checked. The green light means
Oh,
on.
no, I'm sorry.
Because you hit this.
Tomahawk. Tomahawk.
Yeah, there you go.
Tomahawk. Toma where the eye divides.
That's right.
I used to listen to the old radio, what was it?
Okay, I'm going to call the Plan Commission meeting to order Tuesday, March 5th, 2019 at 6 p.m. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Commissioner Groff,
Here.
Commissioner Pearden,
Here.
Alderman Kubaki,
Here.
Mayor Cheverati,
Here.
Commissioner Jocks,
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster, Commissioner Bartlett,
Here.
Planner Tresbiatowski.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. Statement of public notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on March 1st, 2019.
Thank you. And then we have approval of the minutes from February 5th, 2019.
Move to approve?
I'll second.
Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously. Public hearing. Do I read that? Or do you read that?
I can read it. Public hearing for renewal of a conditional use grant in accordance with section 14 of the City of Muskego zoning ordinance for Payne and Dolan for the purpose of continued mining and processing of sand and gravel and the exterior use of an asphalt plant on Crowbar Road.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this public hearing? It's a no. Therefore, I'm closing the public hearing. Consent business.
Move to approve?
Do we have to read them
Yeah.
first?
Yeah, you went.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Jerry wants to get home.
That's right. Jerry's in a rush.
Resolution 006-2019, renewal of conditional use grant for the purpose of continued mining and processing of sand and gravel. Resolution 009-2019, annual review for the Durham Hill Auto. Resolution 010-2019, annual review for Schaefer snow plowing and grading. Resolution 011-2019, approval of a building site and operation plan for a seasonal outdoor garden at Holtz, or at Elliott's Ace Hardware. Resolution 012-2019, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for a seasonal garden located at Piggly Wiggly. Resolution 013-2019, approval of the sale of fireworks for American Fireworks and Novelties at Jets Fuel. And Resolution 016-2019, approval of building and site and operation plan amendment for DJ's lawn sprinklers in the old Parks Garage.
Thank you. Now, is there a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
Any discussion on any of those? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent items approved unanimously. New business for consideration, Resolution PC 007-2019, approval of an annual review for the George Alex Robert Jacob property located on Loomis Drive and North Cape Road. We need a motion?
Move
first?
to approve.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So this property here has an annual review that we view every year. We went out to these properties in the middle of February, and this property itself was pretty good. There was two major things that were kind of off what was approved. One was an additional temporary sign, you can tell has been there for some time, that was pretty large. And there was also a handful of unlicensed vehicles on the north side of the building that weren't part of any site approvals that were previously granted for this site. We sent a letter to the owner, did a follow-up inspection at the end of the month, and at that time, the A-frame sign was removed, and the majority of the unlicensed vehicles on the north side of the building were removed. There still were a few, I think 4 or 5 vehicles that were not allowed to be there that were unlicensed. The dealership, which is in the building to the south, does have approval to have 5 cars for sale by the road, but that's really it, so there should be no other unlicensed vehicles out on that property. So we did send, we are letting the owner know that they have 15 days from the date of this plan commission approval, excuse me, to make sure that there are no more than 5 cars for sale out on this property. So that's how the resolution is drafted.
Okay, any,
Adam, in previous years, has there been any issues?
Yeah, they're minor compared to some of the other sites, but it's like this kind of stuff, a few little things each year. Some years are a little better than others. There are some other annual reviews that are much bigger violators than this one, that's for sure.
How can we encourage people to take this more seriously? Because this seems to happen very frequently with these.
I don't like to say this because I don't like to do it because it's not fun for anyone, a lot of work, but the only time we see people really act fast is when there's a citation on the line. I can tell you almost any property that we deal with these kinds of issues, whether the citations have been issued or very close to being issued, that's the only time people really seem to keep things at stick. One thing we could do on any of these annual reviews is we could bring them back at a different interval too, to kind of try to hold them a little more accountable. Whether it be a 6-month or 3-month or whatever. I mean, that takes time for everyone here, more items, but if it's something that's chronic, maybe worth it to look at in the future. There's no magical fix other than, like I said, one thing I know that our old attorney always used to say is make it more expensive to violate than it is to not violate, and people will stop violating, in the sense of citations.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason this one was not on the consent, because the issues were probably so minor and they were mostly taken care of. I'm pretty confident that when we go back out, they'll be good. This owner's usually pretty good about coming to compliance. I know that there's been some changes with tenants and things in this property. Maybe that has something to do with things being a little bit off this time. So that's kind of why we wanted to still discuss it, but I'm pretty confident they'll probably take care of it.
Well, if we approve this evening and you go out there and re-inspect, where are we at that point?
If they aren't in compliance, typically we would cite them at that time then.
Okay.
I think that's probably the most prudent action because these aren't new things. I mean, the owners know they need to talk to us about their site approvals and site changes.
Okay.
This site here is always tenant-based, lots of tenants that come and go, and not that that's a bad thing, but when it's tenants and not long-term tenants, and they're shorter term, it seems like, they don't always know they need approvals and don't always come forward then, and that's when they're kind of getting caught in some of these items.
Okay. All right, thank you.
is there any other discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. Resolution PC 008, 2019, approval of an annual review for Fry Auto located on Loomis Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just pull up the drawing here, or the write-up real quick. So, as the mayor stated, this is for Fry Automotive. Fry Automotive is located down on Highway 36, kind of where Muskego Dam and everything intersect, right down there. This property definitely had a lot of issues when we did our review. This property has many issues pretty much every year, to the point where we're kind of, wondering where do we do here, because he's at the point where the owner will call us, asking us when we're going to do it, even though the inspection might be done, and then every year it's just saying, sorry, I have too many cars. To the point where we always try to work well with these people, but what do you say other than, You got to be in compliance all year round, not just the one day we go look at it. And even then, they're not even slightly in compliance. In this example, the person had like 20, 30, some cars parked on the lawn. They actually plowed the lawn and had cars parked all over the lawn, which isn't allowable to begin with. In addition to cars being parked double or triple deep, there's tons of junk vehicles on site, which we're not allowed to have. I mean, part of the site looks like it's a junkyard. There's car parts everywhere. Like I said, there was a few times where Aaron and I went through this site where I had to make sure I didn't hit my mirror on vehicles. I asked Aaron, hey, am I clear over there? Because the lanes that should be 2 to 3 cars wide were barely enough for a pickup truck. I told the owner that he should be here tonight. He isn't. I don't know why he isn't, because I told him he should be here to kind of explain what he's doing here. This is one I would definitely recommending deferral on this first and foremost. And I think this is one of those things where I don't know if we give him, deferral till next month and then say, if you're not perfect then, for lack of a better term, cite right away, and we can backdate the citation to when we did our first letter to them if we wanted, so that when he does get cited, if he doesn't come into compliance, there'll be kind of a pending bigger fine that maybe hopefully lights that fire. Or we could even do some combination of citing him sooner than that, or we could do something where we still defer it, and once it's in compliance, still consider, do we want to maybe do like a 3-month or 6-month review? This is a site out of all of them that we have had the most chronic problems with, that I think we really need to try to do something to nip in the bud, because it's getting out of control. And don't get me wrong, we're not receiving a lot of complaints, but when you drive by, it looks horrible. And, people coming from, either coming through this corner of the city, that southeast corner of the city, or coming from Wind Lake, this is what they're seeing. It doesn't look good. He has a very nice building. He has a very nice site. He has large fenced areas that are meant for outdoor storage. He has a large outbuilding that's meant for these like junk vehicles and extra vehicles. But from what we've seen and heard, those are packed to the gills, and that's why they're bleeding all over the site.
Well, this is an epidemic. He's stood before us the last several years and pleaded with us and swore up and down that it was going to change, and nothing has changed. And I'm shocked and disappointed that he's not here tonight to at least, I don't know what that's, but I would recommend, so he's still on an annual review basis?
Yes. Yeah, the couple that were on this round are all annual. The ones that are every other year, they're not on this cycle right now.
I know the names I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Constantly.
Yep.
And this is one of them, unfortunately, and it's time to enforce something a little on a stronger level. I'll take your recommendation, but he's had the time and multiple opportunities over the past several years, just in my time on this commission. I may recommend just simply going straight to citation at this point.
If we do that, if this helps the board, the way we know the process a little bit, we issue a citation. He's not going to have a court date for probably a good month or two, just because of the things that are in the court system already. So it still, in theory, gives him plenty of time before he has his day with the attorney, because his first step is talking to our attorney. And if by that time he is in compliance, we can obviously work out some kind of ground where he doesn't seek some super huge fine. Maybe it's just enough to cover our time, but that's that fine line of where do you make it enough where they don't want it to happen again.
I'm also sensitive to the fact that this has been a somewhat of an abnormal winter. We've had a lot of snow. It's been very cold. The piles haven't melted. I'm very sensitive to that. But I'd be much less irritated if this has not been an annual irritation for all of us. I just don't like seeing the same names and then a gentleman standing at the microphone feeding us a line of BS every single year.
Has he been fined previously?
Yeah, I don't think it's been the last couple years, because I think he's been able to get it in line pretty quick. But this, I would probably say, is by far the worst we've ever seen it.
And has that fine caused action?
Yeah, I remember when there was a fine, things got fixed really quick and really well. I don't know where the cars went. I think it was actually, there was a gas station, that's abandoned gas station across the street from this site. He used to operate out of part of that gas station site. And I think when we had our citations, he was at that property. He's only been in this building a few years. But yeah, there has been citations in the past, and they did result in pretty quick action on his part.
I'd like to jump in. I'd like to suggest we're going to consider having him issue fine right away, citation, that we also follow up with either a 3 or a 6 month check, so that
I'd say a minimum.
No question.
it stops, otherwise he
Quarterly.
thinks he pays it and then he goes back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say a minimum 3 month.
And the court, if we were to issue a citation, we don't consider it like a closed issue. Like, we could still keep pursuing a fine for each day until it is in complete compliance. So if they come to the court and say, oh, I'm 90% good, the court's gonna say, okay, great, and come back next month and get your next 10% done. And if you aren't, that fine just keeps raising, a potential fine, I say, because in the end, the judge and the attorney decide on the final amount. But I think at most, I think we still want to defer it to show the significance of the board's approval meaning something. And then with that, looking for direction of, do we just defer it and let that be? Do we do a citation and defer it? And then I think when we come back from our deferral next month, that's when we can look at a 3-month or 6-month or whatever we want to do, just because let's see where this next month goes even.
I think the disrespect that he didn't show here also plays a role. Go ahead.
And you've already made 2 inspections.
Yes, we have. And there was a little improvement, I won't say nothing. The area that was the worst where they're all parked on the lawn, most of those were starting to be, they were actively running when we were there, warming them up to move them. But there was still plenty of, like, the junk stuff was never touched because it's not easy to be moved. It's not buried in snowbanks either. That's the thing is, some of these buildings in the fence there you can't even get to them because there's cars in front of them. Yeah, that's the owner.
Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
We are.
We are.
Can we invite him right up? Because
I was figuring that. I thought he was going to do it, but is the microphone on?
Couple more you guys? Or?
I
Okay.
don't know.
Same amount, I'm not sure.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Fry,
That would be me.
I just don't like seeing your name on here constantly.
I don't either.
You stood up here last year at this time.
2 years ago.
And you committed, okay. You
I
committed,
made it through a year.
pardon me?
I think I made it through a year.
Yeah, I'm not here to debate the dates and my
I know,
recollection and whatnot. I mean, that's semantics, but you committed in no such uncertain terms that things would improve, and I'm made to understand that this most recent visit it could be one of your biggest violations yet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're pretty understanding people, but I live in that part of town. I drive by it, I see it. So,
Still looks good from the front, doesn't it?
what's that?
Still looks good from the front, doesn't it?
I know, you know the
Better
rules.
than the old place.
What's the, I don't know, tell me what's going on.
I'm getting old and I'm getting tired and it's just tough to get everything done anymore, So I have no excuse, I just, I got a huge payroll and I got a lot of people paying. I got to keep the balls in the air. It's just business stuff. Everybody else knows what goes on, and maybe I'm not doing things right, but I've been here for 23 years, so I must be doing something right,
Well, we want to get the situation resolved once and for all. And not, I ran a business myself.
Yeah.
I know it takes time and effort to do that.
Yeah,
And all we want you to do is to run your business the way it's supposed to be run.
Well, that's what I did. Yeah, that's what I want, and this is a speed bump for me too, I thought he was going to have a heart attack a couple days ago. I never seen him so upset, but I mean, it's a pain in the butt for me too, and I mean, this is the busiest time of year. I mean, I probably said this before. I wish what I could do is switch this here meeting with you guys till July, and I think we talked about that, but I don't know if you guys do all the renewals all in February or what, but that would really help me out because I do stock up right now. Tax time, people get their monies back right now, and I get fat. It's like my place gets fat. It is normally, but it gets a little fatter because it's like the retail in December, I mean, if Macy's didn't have their Christmas time, they wouldn't be able to stay open the rest of the year. And right now, I'm busting at the seams trying to get all these cars gone. So give me a July inspection and instead of a February, and I think we'll all be happier, So not to say I shouldn't be in compliance in February. And that's probably
gonna be my next
going
point.
But
It just gives you in this particular case, 4 more months to react at the 11th hour. Again, a comment that I made before you showed up was that I'm sensitive to this, a little bit of recent abnormal weather pattern that we've had. We've had a lot more snow than we had in years past, and the temperatures have been pretty cold, and I'm in the trucking business, so I get it. Mechanical things break when it gets cold, all right? But I also know if you cycle things and you keep them moving, they don't get the lot rot and they're easier to move. So I understand that probably more than anybody on this board. But I don't want to keep having this conversation. And quite frankly, we've had the consideration here tonight may be just more frequent, not annual. You know, we might be to a biannual or a quarterly inspection. I just can't think that that wouldn't help you stay ahead of the curve. I also was a business owner where I had to address things. You can't do 10 projects and then clean up all at once. You know, my guys were cleaning up after that project. And so it's just a different philosophy, I think, that you have to take on. And you said you have a large staff, and I think they need to help you more accomplish these types of things, because I like you, and I wish you the very, very best, and you have been a terrific businessman in this community for a long, long time. But when you see the same names show up on the agenda, you feel a little bit disrespected because you cut people some slack, and you like, come on, you know, let's work together. And it's kind of a one-way street here. So you tell us, I guess.
Besides telling you, like I said, that, well, the 11th hour thing is huge. I moved a lot, and I'm sure Adam saw that already, to make it happen. And, you know, I'm sick of saying the same thing over and over. I got to get into a niche here to where it doesn't get beyond the means, you know. But I work at maximum capacity, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that'll ever change. And I want to expand this year, and obviously this negative notch right here ain't going to make you guys happy when I put more parking lot in. That's what I plan on doing this year, but then I'll run out of grass to put cars on. Anyway, I don't know what else to tell you besides I'll work on it, but I mean, I just got to change the way I do things, I guess. And I mean, I've been there for 23 years, and I guess
You're doing something right.
Every other
Right?
year,
You're doing
I got
something right to
big
be in
issues
business
here.
that long. You can't be in business that long and do everything wrong.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing right, adopt those philosophies towards this aspect of your
Yeah,
business.
no, right.
And I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to run your business.
No, exactly. And I'm not here to get into that, because we all got our own problems, you know. But I mean, got to make it to where it's not you guys' problem, I guess. So
I'm glad you showed up,
yeah, I thought it was 6:30. I apologize. So
because if you,
that it started, all right.
truthfully, you may not have liked the outcome had you not shown up.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say, I believe the man. I want to trust the man. I'd like to give him an opportunity to perhaps, and this is just me, you know, perhaps by the end of April, when things thaw a little bit, get things cleaned up. But then I'd like to see some type of more regular monitoring of the situation. I imagine it's probably tougher in the winter to keep things.
It is.
Okay, so
Especially this time of year.
right now, you're not going to, there's no way, even if you wanted to, go out there tomorrow in a polar vortex and move 20 cars. It just doesn't
No, we
happen.
did a pretty good job already.
All right, so he can if he wants to.
Yes, it just
Would
no
that be
sleep.
deferring it?
I'm open to
Review it again in a month?
discussion.
Well,
I mean, that-
Once.
my concern is, and we've danced this dance before, is we clean it up, and then 3 months later, it's back where we have, you know, we get a problem again. How do we resolve this once and for all, in your mind?
Well, he made a good point about it. When it comes to projects and stuff, that's kind of how I do it. I wait till I get piled up and then make a big exodus, you know, and whether it be you guys pushing me or me just getting, you know, and I guess that's what's got to change here, is that I got to keep up on everything, but it's just so hard to, I got to think differently in order to get it done right, you know, and I guess, I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, I hate to say go ahead and do more inspections, because that's just going to add one more thing to the old list I got to do all the time. But it might keep me better in shape here. Maybe if it's not in February, though, it'd be great, you know. So
But if anything, we want to check it at its worst. You should be in your best condition now and only get better from here on out, really.
Yeah.
I mean, unless we need to change how we start doing our approvals. An approval shouldn't be in your best case, and, you know, your worst case scenario, you should be meeting this and only get better from there.
I just think quarterly inspections could help you attain better business practices in that aspect. because you'll be more cognitive of it, or cognizant of it, rather, and address it more regularly, you know? It seems to be something that you mentally kind of block out, so maybe just dedicate one employee to it. Again, I'm happy, as a businessman myself, if I'm happy to come down and help you and move some cars or give you a little bit of guidance, let you know what I know from some of my experiences. Love to do it. Whether or not that's helpful, I don't know. But I don't want to see you fail, and I don't want to see you here, and I just want to see you succeed, and I want to see you come back when you ask to expand and do those types of things. Those are the reasons we want business owners up here, you know, not for silly stuff like this.
Yeah.
Adam, can you remind me how the resolution is written to address this?
Right now, it's actually just, well, it's written for deferral. I mean,
Okay.
the resolution, you know, if you were to approve it, you would want to add those conditions as be it further resolved. I mean, it depends. If you want to defer it, like if you said giving them to a certain time frame, whatever that may be, my suggestion is defer it till that time frame and have that first deadline be when we bring it back. I mean, we can defer
So
it for a month or 2 months or
You had
whatever.
said April, which is actually next month, hard to believe with this long winter, but, so that's what we could do, which is recommended already to defer, and then you can still determine if you want the quarterly from that
What we could do
point.
is, if you're saying April, we could say,
I probably meant through April, truthfully.
so I mean, yeah, you have to keep in mind that we need time to do our inspections and stuff and put the packet together. So if you're saying through April,
So then
that probably
May.
doesn't even put it on March, probably puts it on the May Plan
May,
Commission.
okay.
I don't know if that's too long. I'll accept
I'm-
anybody's.
Whatever you
I think
guys say.
that's, I think that's
acceptable.
reasonable.
I just know, I mean, it could snow in April.
So what do you need here?
Well, if anything, I'd just say we would just vote to defer it. I don't think we even amend anything. I think this time we just vote to defer it and bring it back to the May Plan Commission.
So what's going to happen is you're going to go out and do an inspection probably between April and May.
It would probably be
meeting.
like middle of April to get us on the May meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, middle to end. I mean, you
And
know.
at that time, if, well, no, does
Well,
it,
and then what I would do is I would bring back to the Plan Commission a report of what was there.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you guys can decide what you want to, if you say, yeah, we're happy, let's just approve it. If you're not happy, decide what you want to do. And at that same time, then you could add a quarterly or semi-annual review or whatever you want to do.
Well, I'd like it on record that if we defer and we give that additional time, at a minimum, I'd like to see biannual and potentially quarterly.
And I think it'd be a fantastic thing for you to come forward on that May meeting and say, and this is what I'm going to do in the future to retain compliance. You know, whatever the plan is, give us some bullet points and say, this is what I've done.
Obviously, the biggest problem is that I got too many cars.
Yes.
That's the problem, so.
The thing that I've noticed change, and when you're at your old site, this wasn't an issue, it's only become an issue, I feel like in your new site was the junk stuff. I mean, there's a lot of cars that look like they were in car accidents where people died, and they're not cars of the, I mean, you sell very nice cars.
Yeah.
Your cars in your lot for sale are very nice. These cars are cars that you're not gonna, I mean, clearly you're not gonna sell. I don't know what you do with them, but a lot of them
Yeah.
are not saleable. They're buried in the snow. You can tell you haven't touched them in forever, and then there's just random parts. I mean, like I said, with the nice vehicles you have, I can't believe that these junk vehicles are making you any money.
Yeah,
If the junk stuff was gone alone, that would significantly help the problem, probably.
right.
so then Adam has noted the comments, and I think we can just approve it, which defers it to,
We'll set it up for the May Plan Commission, and
Okay.
then in order for us to do the prep, we would do our inspections like mid to late April.
so the approval now just advances it to the May meeting.
So that's changing the inspection date,
Mid-April.
period, from here on out?
No, just for this
Oh.
one discussion.
Just one, yeah.
The next discussion.
Yeah.
And then we'll lay out a amicable timeframe. I don't think we're gonna be able to avoid the winter months altogether, quite frankly.
Gotcha.
I do have one comment, because I've been on the board a very long time, and you have been here many times.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
last time that you got this bad, you moved them all to your house, so please don't move them
No,
to
don't
your
worry about that.
house.
No, that's like, the
Do
wife
not,
won't dig that.
because then I will vote for a citation. I don't want to have to look at it twice a day on
That
my
was-
way to and from work.
I think that was 5 years, that was more than 5 years ago.
Is it very evident how you got compliant?
I'm just curious, has anyone talked about like a little bit longer term solution and some screening and some other options that maybe would be available?
There is extensive screening areas already.
There
In
is,
fact, it
yeah.
started small,
As a
and he
matter-
came back in for an outbuilding, and he came back in
Yeah.
for another screening, so,
Yeah,
you know,
It's
yeah,
maxed
that's,
out.
there's pretty much maxed
All
to what you can
maxed out.
screen.
Yeah, I don't want no more of that, that gives me boundaries, which I've overstepped, but,
all right.
Okay,
is
any other?
it's just us car guys that are that can get the conditional use grant, is that correct?
The Plan Commission, when they approved the original uses, so we've had gas stations have annual reviews. Annual reviews
Oh,
are basically,
really?
if the Plan Commission thinks the use could be problematic, they can require them. We've had a lot of businesses that have an annual review, but they've been compliant without a doubt for like 5 years in a row. Well, then they say, okay, if they've been good for 5 years straight, let's just get rid of it.
Gotcha.
It's when properties keep having problems, then they don't get rid of them then, because the whole idea is to catch the problem.
I see.
Okay, any other comments?
We anticipate a nice, clean inspection.
So we need, I think, a first and a second for the deferral, right?
Oh, yeah, because
Right, we
it's
still have to
approved.
vote on
I'm
the
sorry,
deferral,
I was
right?
thinking, okay, so we need well, what did we have right now? We did a motion.
Motion to approve, I think now you want to do a motion to defer. And
Well,
then,
we're
I'll make that
approving your
motion.
recommendation, though.
Isn't
Wasn't
it,
that the motion?
that's why it's,
the resolution doesn't state that, the resolution's always
Okay.
written for approval. Our supplement recommends deferral.
got it.
But-
Okay, so we need a deferral.
Motion to defer to the May meeting.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's approved to go to May.
So that skips over a couple months, is what you're telling me? Because there's meetings between.
Mid-April is the
Yeah,
inspection.
so we're gonna, I would say plan mid-April, be in compliance by middle of April the latest, and then we'll
5
be there
weeks
around
you
that.
got.
We're allowing the snow to hopefully melt a little bit.
All right,
Yeah, so it's 5 weeks.
all right,
And not your yard.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Okay. Resolution PC 14, 2019, approval of the building site and operation plan for Interstate Partners LLC on Commerce Center Parkway.
Move to approve?
Second?
Okay, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. So the petition that's in front of you tonight is for a new building, which is located south of the CGS HSI building and just east of Walmart. This is the last business park type site that is left in this area. As you may remember, this area way back in the day was originally set up for like residential or multifamily. Then throughout the iterations of changes out here and market conditions, this area was all expanded to be business park zoning, BP zoning. And it was kind of a line was drawn that where the Ace Hardware is that currently exists, everything from there westward is going to be more of a retail, and everything east of there is going to be more of this light industrial business park kind of setup. So the applicant, Interstate Partners, they built one spec building right now that's next to Ace Hardware. That is, I don't think it's fully leased, but a good chunk of it is leased by two different users, Cosentino and AutoForce. And then just east of that is where the HSI CGS site is that we approved not too long ago. And then this is, like I said, that last site to the south. The building is being built as a spec building, so there are no specific users in mind. And the size of the building is about 126,000 square feet. So it's a pretty big building. This building is a little bit taller by about 5 feet, I believe, than the other spec building they have, and bigger than the CGS HSI building that's to the north of this too. But it is still within the height allowance per the zoning code. As far as the zoning goes, and it comes to sizes and uses, for the most part, this building meets the zoning requirements. There was one slight issue with open space, but they were within like 1/10%, so the resolution just states they have to create that, make up for that 1/10% of open space that they exceed. Otherwise, what they're asking for is allowable in the zoning code. Now, the zoning code does state that if any user has distribution or warehousing from this site, the code states if that's over 50,000 square feet in area, so if a single tenant would be over 50,000 square feet of warehouse or distribution, they would need to apply for a conditional use grant in this zoning district. As when you have distribution or warehouse over 50,000, that's the only way that's allowable. If it's under that, though, that is not necessarily the case. But like I said, there aren't specific tenants in mind right now, but when those tenants are known, they will have to come forward to the city for, at a bare minimum, a business registration, and depending upon their needs for outdoor storage, outdoor display, overnight parking, things like that, it could require plan commission re-review for each of those tenants. It really would depend on what their use would be. As far as design guides go, this is governed by the city's general design guide and the business park design guide. For the most part, the building meets the requirements. If you look at the other buildings that have been approved in this area, this building is very, very similar in design. They're using precast concrete panels, which does meet our masonry requirements. So it's a material that's going to be durable and going to last, not something that requires a lot of maintenance, which is what we look for in that area. They are going with a slightly different color scheme here. There's kind of been a bluish white scheme that was kind of adopted and then replicated with not really intentional from what we heard. So this building is just more earth tones, browns and things like that, taupe, things like that. So the colors will definitely, I think, be well received. It's nothing obtrusive or odd for the area. Like I said, when this site was originally developed too, we kind of always did see a concept plan, which was shown in your packet, for a building roughly of this size and this layout. So what we're seeing today is really much what we kind of always thought we would see here once there were some concept plans for this whole eastern part of this Commerce Center Parkway development. When it looks at the site itself provides plenty of parking, about 215 parking stalls throughout all four sides of the site. And based upon typical industrial users, that should more than exceed what we like to see as a city. I think there's a little bit more parking based on what the developer likes to see, depending on who a user might be. Having more parking is helpful, especially if you have more office component, just because you could have more employees, potentially. They are asking for a reduction in parking stall size to 9 by 18, which is something the Plan Commission's been pretty receptive to lately, and I think there's even been talk of changing our zoning code to that someday, so that should not be an issue. They are asking for a waiver to have landscape pump-out islands less than every 10 parking stalls. They do have some of them on portions of the site, but not the whole site. And on some of the other sites like this, especially with this site being tucked kind of back in, it is pretty hidden between Walmart and CGS. A lot of the parking won't be that visible, and with the berm on the east, so staff didn't have an issue with that. I think one of the most important things that's really worth mentioning here, two things. So one of the things that's listed in the resolution that I know there were some questions from the development team on is this parking lot in the back is a large area where you have truck docks and truck bays, as well as parking against the southern lot line. And if you look at the aerial photography or the air photo that's in there, you'll see that this, right behind this site to the south is a retention pond. So pretty much you go, off the edge of the parking lot, and even though it might not be extremely steep, you're gonna still have a decline right off the parking lot into the pond. We've had a few other sites in the city where this condition was prevalent, and those more recent sites, we've required them to provide a guardrail or curbing. Most people choose guardrail for cost's sake. We know that curbing may not be as practical for them here because they intend on the stormwater kind of sheet flowing off the back. But staff has the approval written right now for a guardrail, but if the owners wanted to choose curbing along this back instead and just do cutouts for drainage, staff doesn't have an issue with that, but we want some type of barrier protection. My worry, if they were to use just curb stops, is the idea that curb stops with plows get pushed into the storm pond. That's our experience. So that's not going to really help much. So that's one thing we do have written in the resolution. The last thing, which is probably the biggest thing, really relates to the berm. As if you guys have ever been out there and looked at this site from either the residential side or the commercial side, you'll notice there was what originally was proposed to be an 18-foot tall berm on the east side of this site. Now, as this site, since it was the last to develop, and as some of the other sites in this complex developed, this site willingly inherited some fill from those sites. So this site has kind of been raised a little bit over time. The problem that creates is the idea that now this site is higher than it used to be. So the effective height of that berm is not what it used to be. The idea is if you're starting at a zero plane and your berm's 18 feet tall, that's an 18-foot barrier. Now, in this case, though, it's been raised over time, and I looked at some of the original grading plans for the site. It's been raised quite a bit, like slowly, intentionally, but slowly. And I know that when we approved some grading work there for the CGS HSI site, this was a concern we brought up to some of the engineers was careful how much you fill because it's going to raise your site up and then a tall building. How effective is that berm to the residences on the east? So the way we have the resolution listed right now is we use HSI CGS as a perfect example because that site is right next door, and we had similar concerns on that property. And what we found out is with the grading and filling they were doing, their berm lost a lot of its effective height. So what we did is we required them, the way that the plans were, was to have at least 9 feet of effective height on the west side of the berm. So whatever the grades and parking were on the west side of this berm, have at least 9 feet of berm with then added dense landscaping on top of the berm to help limit the view of this area to the residences that are to the east. I mean, this berm does a pretty good job on its own, but the more you raise it, the less effectiveness the berm has because your building's kind of up on this platform. In looking at the approval for CGS next door, like I said, they proposed doing about 9 to 11 feet of additional berm, or of total berm height. So they had to add like 4 or 5 feet to that berm. They were actually able to add an extra foot, so they ended up with about 10 feet of effective berm height. One thing that I was expecting to get today and I haven't got yet from the development team this morning, I was supposed to get it, was some kind of cross-section. I don't know if you have, if you maybe want to bring that up here, you're welcome to. A cross-section to kind of look at what we can do. Can the site be lowered a little bit? Can the berm be raised a little bit? Because this building being 5 feet taller, you're going to see it quite a bit more than CGS, even if you have a 9-foot berm height. And that's something that I think is a little concerning of ours, especially when you look at, and I have a drawing here if you want to see it, the original plans for this berm was supposed to be 18 feet of effective height. So that's a big difference with the filling that's happened over time. The benefit here versus the neighbor to the north is that they aren't going to have trucks right by this eastern lot line, so we're not trying to hide trucks as much. It's more still just this big vertical wall that the neighbors see off in their distance. We want to minimize that impact. And so between lowering the site, berm heights, landscaping, there's different ways to do that. So we can talk with the applicant here and kind of see what he has to say. And that's the one big thing, though, that right now the resolution says that they need to make sure that there's 9 feet of effective berm height somehow, and then add some landscaping up there because we really want to minimize that impact to those neighbors behind.
So are your sight lines here?
The diagram that you see in the packet, the sight lines, I don't think that's exactly perfect. I think there's some better ones that the applicant has here he can pass out. You know, one example that we provided them was the site to the north. When they did theirs, they actually used more of an engineering cross-section kind of idea, so it gave us some real numbers. So, yeah, if you want to bring that up, please. That's really the bulk of it. I mean, we are recommending approval for this here. We'll look at this real quick, but we are recommending approval subject to the things that were mentioned and listed in the supplement. And I think the biggest thing we just want to talk about here probably, in my eyes, is how we handle berm and screening.
Thank you.
My name's John Heller with Interstate Partners.
Thanks, John.
The one thing that I would solve what this is in a second, you don't do a camera, do you?
A camera?
I mean, like, put this on the table for the audience, or do you need?
Oh, yeah,
I
no,
don't
we
think
won't be able
can
to do that.
No.
So, one of the things that I would mildly disagree with that one is when we designed this area that this is parked, the berm was supposed to be 18 feet high from the resident side. This site's about a foot higher now than it was originally planned to be. We're now proposing, in the document I gave you, we're going to lower the finished floor of the building a foot. We're going to lower the grades along the eastern edge of the berm, the western edge of the berm, eastern edge of the property. We're going to lower those 2 feet. So we'll effectively have pretty close to the 9-foot limit. So we never had 18 feet on the Walmart side, if you will. It was 18 feet. If you look at the elevation of the houses back here, which is on the right-hand side of your drawing, on their back porches, they're at about 820. The top of the berm is 840 to 842. So the berm's actually about 20 feet high from the back of the elevation at the back of their homes. In addition to that, and what we show on the berm is east of our berm, between the toe of the berm and the property line, there's a very large existing tree line. The trees are at least 30 feet high along there. Now, they're all deciduous trees, so they lose their leaves in the winter. So what we show on this, cross-section wise, is down here we show what it looks like from here to the kind of back corner of the building. And on the upper one, we show what it looks like from this home to the kind of front edge of the building. And we show that tall tree line, in which case in the summer, they're probably not going to see much of the building at all. And then our engineer showed 8-foot trees on top of the berm to show kind of, the red line is kind of where, I'm sorry, the black dotted line is kind of where the sight line would be above an 8-foot tree. Now, the reality is our existing trees that we planted 10 years ago are now probably 12 to 14 feet high. So they're actually a little higher than this shows. So what I would request that you do is, since we are going to lower the grades on the west side, let us just plant a bunch of more trees on top to provide evergreens in the winter to screen them. Because by the time we start to add CGS they added 4 feet or 5 feet, but they did it in a fairly limited area. If we try to stretch that over 200 feet, the slopes are gonna get too steep, and we're gonna have to remove all those existing 12-foot high trees. And they're gonna be really hard to transplant, they're now so big. And I just assume not lose those, because they're providing pretty good screening today from there. So that would be a request, is to have Adam review our lowered grades, and if possible, let us just plant more trees, evergreens, that'll stay green and provide more screening. You know, if they're 6 feet high, they'll be, in 5 years, they'll be 8, 9 feet high anyway.
Does this depiction reflect the lowering of the building?
This reflects the lowering of the grades on our site. The berm, this reflects the actual berm height.
Okay, but the building itself still sits at nearly 870, right?
It sits at roughly,
835 is the.
yeah, we dropped the floor a foot, so it's roughly 869.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
And then we dropped, this area here, we dropped, I mean, it's 9 feet high from the parking lot, and so, and don't forget the loading court is 4 feet below the building height, so you shouldn't see trucks.
Okay, thank you.
And then with regard to, if I can request a few other things on Adam's resolution, we would rather do curb than guardrail, because curb is actually less expensive than guardrail. If you're talking about full-blown, like, highway-style guardrail, curb is less expensive, and it's quite frankly easier for us to maintain and do with landscaping. And most of our loading courts actually being drained in catch basins that are being piped through the pond into riprap. We're doing very little sheet draining based on the way the grades are set up. And so if we put curb along there, we can still provide some outlets, and in maybe some strategic places, we'll put some large boulders so trucks don't, like we have 4 drive-up doors here, but this court is deep enough that trucks should never get close to that outside edge, but we'd rather do curb than guardrail if that's acceptable to the city.
But that wouldn't be poured curbing, right?
Poured curbing.
Poured curbing, okay, all right,
And I would have no problem with that.
Wheel stops.
okay, all right,
As Adam said, wheel stops end up in the pond.
okay, yeah,
Because they'll end up on top of the 6-foot-high ice pile that would be there this way.
right.
And then they would slide down into the pond, onto the top of the ice.
There we go.
And then the other thing that we would request, we're grateful to you for on the landscape islands and on the size of the parking stalls, and it's consistent with what's in the rest of the park. The other thing, and the light poles, the other thing we would request, I'm just a little confused on 2 things in Adam's resolution. One is it talks about any business needs that involve outdoor parking, is the way the resolution's drafted. I'm assuming that you don't mean car parking, you mean like permanent truck parking or something like that.
Yeah, and I can clarify that for the board. And the board will probably know just from past practice, this is a common way we've written in other resolutions. Doesn't mean we can't change it if the owner wants some clarification. The intention is overnight parking. So employees that are on a normal shift, that's not a concern. But if it does get a business that says, you know, the planning commission, I don't want to speak for you, but I know as a city, we typically aren't worried about things in the truck dock. Truck docks are meant to house trucks, we get that. But basically, in any of the other non-truck dock areas, if there would be
You
any.
don't want a bunch of trailers and boats parked. even
Yeah,
if
and if you want it, that's fine, but then we should look at the details, and since we don't know tenants, that's kind of hard. So I mean,
CGS, of course, has nothing but trailers in there.
yeah, and like I said, they
That's
requested
part of
it,
their plan.
yeah. So what we could do is, a couple things, the guardrail note, I have no problem with the curbing, I think it's a great solution, we can have cutouts for drainage where we need it. Originally, I believe, from what I heard, that it was meant to be all sheet flow, but no, that's totally fine with us, I think that's a better solution. I thought it was more expensive, but I learned that today it wasn't.
It's about 4 times more
Wow.
expensive.
So yeah, so that's when we could do an amendment for that if we wanted, to change the guardrail to the curbing.
And we've got about 30 feet from the edge of pavement to the edge of pond, and drops about 5 feet along there. So it's not a steep slope like it has been in some other places, like along the southern edge of Walmart's parking lot, where there's actually a retaining wall.
Sure.
Or like you have by Starbucks at Janesville and College. That's a big drop, obviously.
Yeah, and then as far as the parking thing, if it gives the owner peace of mind and the planning commission okay with it, we could maybe just amend the portion that talks about the outdoor parking to be specific to, you know, any outdoor overnight parking or storage needs further planning commission review. It doesn't mean it can't be allowed, it just needs that planning commission
No, but
review.
that'd be fine, because just the way it's drafted today, it was like, if all of a sudden somebody leaves their car there overnight, or.
Yeah, and
you know.
it's chronic stuff that we're looking at.
And then the only other thing is, and this is more of a question maybe for you, Adam, all bollards must be painted to match the colors of the principal structure. I'm assuming you're talking about like bollards in the front of the building?
Typically, it's all site. Now, you could ask for something different.
Because what I would request is that any bollards that we have which we have at our 4 drive-in doors in the rear of the building, and where there's ramp drive-ins, is that they be allowed to be safety yellow.
That's
That
Plan
way-
Commission's
then-
call.
Then the trucks are gonna see them
It's
better when
not
it's snowing.
typically allowed. We sometimes more allow an accent color has historically been done, I don't know what CGS has, but like, let's say they have blue on the building, they have
So if
sometimes
it's-
blue
if the wall's
features.
darker at that spot, you just want it to be one of the lighter colors? of our
That's
palette?
typically, I mean, Plan Commission, I want you to make that decision.
I don't know that anybody's
You
gonna
know.
see them other than the truck drivers that are in the loading court, but that's why
Yeah,
I'm
I
asking.
mean, that's for the members to decide. We typically, we haven't approved, I mean, it's in the back of the site, we can have, obviously, you guys can have a lot more flexibility, I think, on it. You know, if you want to do some kind of contrasting color that's still more neutral, or something, you know, it's up to the Plan Commission what you guys want to do with that. But that is something typically that's in a resolution.
Everybody's gonna
We've
see
been
it.
pretty consistent with it over the whole
I
time.
personally don't think anybody's gonna see it back there, so.
I agree with that, too.
I don't,
I've just always had them safety yellow because that's what the truckers and users, quite frankly, like, because they don't want them hitting the building, and I don't want them hitting the building.
Sure.
You know, But it's fine, if you want it to be the
So-
lightest color or a contrasting color.
Do you want to say, you guys saying like a contrasting color, something so it still stands out a little bit,
If you
but,
look at that color scheme, you know, where the bollards would be on those drive-ins is the darker brown, so we can just use the lighter upper color, that's fine. Or the-
I'm fine with that if you guys are.
That's fine with me, yeah.
it's fine.
All right, that's fine, as long as, I mean, I think you just say color, match the color scheme of the building,
Yeah, we can do that.
then we're fine with
With a contrasting color, yeah, okay.
it. We'd be fine with that, thank you very much.
Okay, is there anything else anybody wants to talk about or ask? Or-
So it really just comes down to what it sounds like is the
Thank you.
berm and the screening, if it is.
The one, you know, looking at this is helpful, because this is kind of what we were giving an example, so just because it gives some real heights.
Misleading because it's not even accurate, really, in terms of where those home elevations are relative to the top. of the
Yeah,
building.
no, and I think,
Pretty
yeah,
high.
yeah, and that's why this is much more realistic. My only question is the idea that, you know, the building pad is still higher. You have a building that's a little bit taller than some of the others. And while if the trees were like a fence where you don't have a gap in between, I can understand the winter sight line, but those trees are still spaced a little bit apart. I mean, even when we're out there now,
And we can, you know,
there's quite you're gonna see this building a lot, and I don't know, Neil, you were part of all this, I'm sure, involved back there, but, you know, it's the idea of, you know, what were those neighbors thought they were gonna have behind them going forward. Now, we haven't had complaints, I wanna be very clear, we have not had complaints how things have been up to this point, and that's good, and we don't hope that there are any, but we just wanna be cognizant of those neighbors, because, you know, that's why this whole berm was done, is you're, you know, well
we haven't
aware.
really, I mean, if you look at the site from the retained, I mean, we haven't done as much filling as you alluded to on this site.
Well, I'm just going by the plans I have in the file, looks like a big difference.
We've got some excess topsoil from this CGS site
Mm-hmm.
that they're responsible for getting rid of, by the way. So that's mainly what was put there. And we put a little bit of fill during their operations to accommodate them, but we've always kind of designed the site grade-wise, even from the original grading planning, to start at the edge of the pond and put our truck court as close to the pond elevation as we could without it, you know, being too close. And then the building would go 4 feet up from there. So we added about a foot to the 836 level, Adam, but we're gonna take it back to 835, where it was kind of originally designed.
There's no way to get it closer to like what you're actually showing as that proposed ground on that east side of the building? I mean, because it still is a pretty good, it's a few
I don't think we can
feet.
get it that low, but the east side of the building will be 9 feet below the berm, so,
I guess the thought with the way we wrote it up would be that the grade at that side of the building would be that low, because
I can't get it that
lowering parking doesn't change anything, because I'm not worried about parking. It's, your building height's
I can't get
not
it
much
that low,
different.
but we were trying to respond to the way you had drafted the resolution. I'd rather do more plantings on the top and have us come in and get that approved by you than.
6-foot plantings
than start
don't,
taking all
yeah,
the- Or then have them be 8 foot, but, you know, we put 6-foot plantings in there 10 years ago that are now 12 and 14 feet high, and I just.
They
assume
do
not-
grow fast.
And I just assume not have to replace all of those with smaller trees, because I'll lose them all.
Right. Yeah, I don't think the neighbors would be happy about
We've got a
that.
bunch of them there, and, you know, they don't even see those trees in the summer at all.
yeah, no, you're right. Those neighbors do have a
They
big tree line in the
only-
backyard
They only see them in
that,
the winter. I mean, if you drive that street in the summer, you can't see the berm at all.
yeah, I agree.
So the neighboring properties are like 822,
820 to 822,
and the building's at 835,
floor elevation.
floor of the elevation.
Right.
I,
So that's what those dashed lines on these cross sections at the top and the bottom kind of show you where sight lines would hit.
assuming all these are accurate, I don't, I don't see much of an issue there.
What's a little difficult for me is I can't really make out the full, the plantings aren't exactly clear as to, it looks like, on the plan I have in front of me, it looks like there's a gap in the plantings.
There is some. Are you looking at
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
This is the original, these are the actual plantings that are there, surveyed
Okay.
by the surveyors.
All right,
So you can see that all the calipers on those trees have grown to at least 5 to 6 inches, where they started out at 2 to 3 inches
yeah, and
10
that's,
years ago.
that's good. Maybe maybe I'm not real,
What we would propose to do, there's a particular gap right where
yeah,
we do the
that's what I'm
cross-section.
noting, yeah.
And that's a nice flat spot on top of the berm that if we start adding material, we're gonna lose some of that because we can't have the slopes be too steep. But I would propose that we fill that gap in. There's a little bit of a gap here and down here even. Just fill it in.
I just feel like the number of trees that are needed would be like I'm thinking 50, 60 trees at a bare minimum to do any kind of slight
think it
work.
needs that.
Well, that's my opinion. I mean,
I don't
this
think you
is
need
the
many,
plan
but
that I
you
found in the
already-
file
You already
that,
asked us to add some trees there.
well, yeah, and this is this plan is what was in the file. Like, this isn't what anywhere as close as out there now. So that makes me wonder, did it not get planted right in the first place? Did a lot of things die? I don't know.
know.
But that's just,
I can't tell you for
even the original plan looks significantly more dense than what's there now. If we were to do some kind of condition with landscaping, I'd either want the plan commission to see it or a very specific number at a minimum that we have to look for, just because that's
I'd be
super
fine-
subjective.
I'd be fine having us come back to you with a landscape plan that you're accepted, that we can get you to accept as a condition of any approval.
Okay. I'd make a motion to, I guess to approve, but asking for a landscape plan to come back before us. I guess at that point, are we able to move this forward with that condition, or do we put this on hold and?
Do we need to address the curb?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could probably make one amendment with everything,
That's
once
why-
you kind of figure out what you want to do with.
Okay, so
So guardrail to curbing,
Yep,
curb,
straightening out the language in the overnight parking issue,
yep.
contrasting colors on the, what do you call those?
The bollards.
Bollards,
Bollards.
and then a landscaping plan to come to the future, in the future.
And I guess the best thing for the developers, kind of what's the best suggestion you give them? Just, there's just more, or how much, filling gaps, like what?
Well, I fill in the obvious gaps.
Yep, obvious gaps, I think, and I think 8 feet.
Who knows? I
Yep.
might end up having to do so much landscaping, it's cheaper for me to add 4 feet of material.
No,
But
I
doubt
understand.
it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking, based on your drawings, that 8 feet looks to be about the height at which we're still seeing the top 4 feet of the building, but
Like I said, I don't think any of the trees that are there are 8 feet anymore, they're all 12.
sure, right, yeah, it grows, yep. So we're just talking new plantings, we want to work with you on that, but that's what I'm thinking we're looking for.
Would you guys want to say that we'll approve this so they can get going with permitting, and then just state before they would get occupancy, they have to have it approved and installed? I think key is
Yeah,
approved
and that's what I was trying to get to. Can we
probably a
do this
better
to move it forward
you
without
have all
holding it up?
that, so we don't have to say it all again?
Yeah, I do have all that.
Okay. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Is it, and then we have,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good. It's
Good looking
really
building.
Thank you.
Resolution 15, 2019, approval of building site and operation plan for D&J Sons and Sons for along North Cape Road.
Move to approve.
Second?
Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So this business, who I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, tied to EMC Corp, or kind of was, I think a lot of people knew it as EMC Corp. They were located actually in our old public utilities building. And they're looking to build a new building, obviously now, and they've been talking with us for some time relating to zonings. They came in front of us previously with the concept site plan and a rezoning, which they did receive with no issues from any neighbors. The neighbors, there aren't many neighbors, and the ones that were there didn't have any problems with it. It was rezoned to M1 light industrial, knowing that this user was going to be coming here for the proposal. So now they got all their details together. They worked really well with staff to kind of develop things over the past couple weeks here, which is appreciated. The new building's about 11,000 square feet, and it's going to consist of kind of a smaller office area in the front, and the back of the building is going to be more kind of storage, truck bay areas. You know, the nature of their business involves, you know, concrete basement forms and things like that, so there, you know, there is a need for also outdoor storage, which we'll talk about in a second here. But in general, most of the trucks will be stored inside. There will be some outside, excuse me, in that outdoor area. When it comes to the architecture of the building, if you look at the colored renderings that are on the screen and in your packets, they did a really good job, we feel, of meeting the design guide for this neighborhood. There haven't been a lot of good opportunities for buildings to meet the design guide because we haven't had a lot of new development down here. So it's really great to see that they're investing in this neighborhood, and it's good to see that their building looks pretty cool. I don't think anyone will argue with that. You know, it follows the Durham Hill Design Guide. The Durham Hill Design Guide does talk about four-sided architecture, but realistically, the back of this is a field that has no intentional plans, and it doesn't seem to make sense to make them really do much in the back, especially since there is some fencing and stuff back there. The front of the building, the front elevation, staff was not recommending any changes. The only things we have listed in the resolution right now was that on the southern elevation, adding a brick band along the southern elevation, since that side is more visible, that just matches the brick banding on the front. And then, let's see here, sorry, I'm just going through my notes. Yeah, so that was the one change that we recommended on the elevations. Other than that, we think the elevations have some, you know, good use of materials. We kind of like how they did the brick on the office building, kind of gives a little standout feature, has that unique storefront, has the decorative front doors, all things that we think will really give this building a lot of character and be a huge improvement for that area. Hopefully maybe be a catalyst for other things to come down the road. They show 12 parking stalls, which should be more than enough. They typically have, I think it's 5 to 6 employees there at one time, so that should be more than enough. Some of the people that go to the job sites meet right on the job sites. With this, there is a kind of a shared access that the county required, because this access, or I'm sorry, the state required, because this access is a state highway. There could be future development to the south of this or to the east of it someday. The landowner that used to own this site owns those sites, so they might be doing some kind of further development there someday. So that access is set up for it. Otherwise, all the accesses they show are the proper widths and proper locations, so staff doesn't have any concerns with that. They are showing having a dumpster outside, but it's going to be in their enclosed area, so that's not really a concern. On the idea of enclosure and outdoor storage, so their site, as you'll notice on the north side of the site plan, does have a larger area that's shown as being gravel, and that area is set for storage. So that we know that they had a need for storage, and that's not a problem. They're enclosing it. The only thing we have noted in the resolution is that there is being that they do concrete forms, the front of their fence and a portion of the side of this fence were actually going to be like a poured stone-faced wall as a nice, solid, durable screen, you know, not only to screen it, but also for their protection to keep people out. And what we're recommending, because there is still some view along that north side of that wall, would be to extend that concrete fencing eastward until the fence kind of takes a little bend. You'll notice a little bit of an elbow. So I think we figured it's about 120 feet, but I could be off on that number a little bit. Other than that, in the building elevation change, those were the only two major changes that staff had in the resolution. Normally, the Plan Commission hasn't been too favorable of gravel storage, but because it is completely enclosed, that's usually been the one time Plan Commission has been okay with it. So staff isn't recommending any changes there because they do have it enclosed on all sides. We think that should be plenty fine and neat. You know, there's no neighbors that dust should bother in this area. Not that dust should really be an issue, especially since they want to have it compacted really nice for their trucks and their equipment. So we are recommending approval subject to those items noted in the resolution and supplement. So it should be a nice addition to that area.
Thanks, Adam. I think it looks great. Anybody?
Yeah.
Have any questions or?
I just have one comment, and it's fairly minor, but I was wondering, I look at the front elevation, and it looks like it's close, but it's not quite centered. The center door doesn't quite line up with the windows above, like if we look down the middle of the building. And I was just wondering if that was intentional for some reason. Looking at the plan, it looks like it could be tweaked just a little bit just to make that all kind of line up and be centered. It looks like it's off by maybe a foot. If you're
talking about those three little windows above the the garage doors?
Yeah, so the windows, they don't look, it looks like one is almost centered, one's a little,
Right.
but then the one, basically, okay, so the window's centered over the doors. The center door into the building looks like it's off center on the building. It looks like it's to the left by maybe a foot and a half. And I don't know if that was intentional or if it just came through on the drawings and it would get tweaked a little. Do you guys see, you don't see what I'm seeing? I must be an architect that just.
I see the two windows on the
Okay,
sides
so
are-
if we look at the door right down the middle of the building.
Yep.
nicely done.
But it's in the middle of the,
The window at the top.
What is he
Are
saying?
you talking about this center door here?
Nope, go to the next door over, right there.
Okay.
That door doesn't appear to be centered on the building.
So the two windows don't line up with the garage door on the right.
Well, the window on the
Yeah,
other
but
side,
the whole office could move over a foot. What's that?
it looks like the window on the far left-hand side doesn't match up either, but that's,
Does
I
it
like
have to be?
I don't mind.
I'm not an architect,
that
but I'm
would
like,
really.
It's fine if we want to let it go. All I'm saying is it just, everything's off-centered just a little bit, and it'd be very easy to fix.
I'm telling you, it would drive my 14-year-old nuts.
and my
Fair enough. Fair enough.
31-year-old, because he's OCD too.
We're just, I won't take them past there.
Lined up with the top, the top one.
Yep.
On top with the vent looks like.
Oh, yeah, because that would look bad if that was off.
Move that, we can't move that, because that's,
No, right.
Yeah, you're right.
that's why he's got the window lined up with that little bump up. And the door down below can't be moved because it get too close to the building. And when you got a big truck with farms and.
Sure.
Going on there, when they hit the building.
Yeah, the office and everything could slide over a foot, but that's all right. We'll move on. It's fine. We'll move on.
I think he got outnumbered.
Can you tell what he does for a living?
Anything else?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved unanimously. Miscellaneous business, Adam, anything?
No, nothing, Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
So what's the reason for moving
That's in Lions Camp. We want your hide.
And he,
Can't help it. Can't help it.
and my polling place
Yeah, you look at it though and you go,
was the Test Corners Fire Department, but I had to read that. I forgot. It all changed.
Oh, they.
On Racine, I'm like, I never got it. So now I drive